Welcome to Brother Owl's Garden. I'm Brian, and I'm presence here today. And there is someone who is very, very honored to have his presence with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine, the one and only Matt Sweetwood. Now, Matt, you're coming to us from Florida. Matt is a longtime successful businessman. He is a single dad of 5 children that he raised on his own. And that's a big part of why I've invited him here today. He'll explain to us how that whole process as it played out in the world at its core was a spiritual folding process of his own. Matt Sweetwood is also the author of a very well-known and renowned book called Leader of the Pack. And he'll be telling us about that. Oh, there it is, Leader of the Pack. And I would like to speak about Matt briefly on a personal level, not just introducing you by his credentials. Matt Sweetwood is a man that I've known for, is it about 7 years or so, Matt, roughly?
That we know each other 7 years. I would think it's longer than that. I bet this kind of thing always happens, right? I'll bet it's like 10 or 12.
Yeah, okay, well, put it this way. I cannot claim to have known Matt when he had hair, but he did know me before I had a beard. We could frame it that. Matt, you are a principled man who I personally admire. You are a mentor to many and deservedly so. To me, you are a friend who I look up to and I respect. And respect is earned, and you've earned a lot of it from me. You are a man that I've observed reinvents himself in real time amidst the storms of life. And so at this point, I'm going to stop introducing you and stop lauding you and just say, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Matt Sweetwood.
Brian, such a pleasure to be here. My neck is hurting a little bit because my head swelled from that introduction. So it's I'm kind of leaning a little bit. No, it's a pleasure to be here with you. I always find it particularly enjoyable when I'm, on shows with people that I love. And so you're one of those. So I think we're going to have a very enjoyable conversation, and hopefully your audience will really get something out of it, right? That's what it's about. People turn in and they listen to, shows like this for inspiration or for, to learn something, or a combination of both, or just to, feel better when they leave. So hopefully we'll have people feeling better when they leave us.
Well, I'm sure that my viewers will appreciate everything that you're going to share today, perhaps even both of them.
You mean both sides of the ocean? That's what you mean. Both sides of the ocean.
Both viewers.
No. You got
Matt,
a lot of important things to share, so audience is going to be growing rapidly.
Well, as I mentioned to you in a personal conversation, I don't really follow the analytics. I don't give it much energy. But on the other hand, to be balanced and realistic, I do hope to reach as many people as would receive what I share. So yeah, it's wonderful to have an increased audience and more subscribers and viewers, of course.
Yeah, let's say, well, I have pretty big social media. I'm going to share, when we're done, all over the place. And in fact, people can reach me at msweetwood. That's everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, all of those nasty little big platforms. msweetwood. I have msweetwood.com. They can reach me there. And we're gonna give you a little promotion when this is done.
Well, thank you.
And hopefully the algorithm on those places won't be cruel to you.
Well, it is what it is, but I certainly appreciate and respect the intention behind that. Thank you, Matt.
Of course, my pleasure.
Matt, we're here talking about as a general umbrella term, and of course we'll touch on specifics and your personal experiences, but we're here talking about what is referred to as the sacred masculine. This is an aspect. Of course, it's not only men that have this. All people have both aspects. These are not genders, they're aspects. The sacred masculine, the sacred feminine. But of course, typically men embody a predominance of the sacred masculine, and women tend to embody a predominance of the sacred feminine. And these are complementary, not at all contradictory. We're never going to even suggest that. It's not correct. But within the regards to grandfatherhood, fatherhood, brotherhood, what experiences are men, having these days in today's day and age? Because things are kind of, they're nuts and they're challenging.
I think that I think in many cases men are a little bit confused, and I think women are a little bit confused, and I think that gender roles have been changing over the last couple of decades. I go back to my own experience of, being left with little children to care for, and that I talk about that in my book, Leader of the Pack, the story of, the wife walking out, dragging you through the court system and ending up with 5 little kids to take care of. My kids one of them was still in diapers when this happened, and then living in a very traditional American town in New Jersey, where the concept of a dad raising children was very, very foreign. I grew up in an environment where dad went to work, you imagine, carries the briefcase, kisses
Right.
the wife, pats the kids on the head, and goes off to work. And, wife takes care of everything. And when I ended up with those children, I was in that circumstance, had really no clue. I was sort of a ship lost at sea, right? And the way I was treated, and this is not a bitching session here at all, but the way I was treated was like, you have no idea what to do. And there were a couple aspects of that, in terms of like, I would hang with the other moms in town and they would look at me like, you don't know what to do. It's sort of that you're an idiot. Like, as Hollywood has portrayed men over the years as sort of bumbling idiots, the school would take the attitude that the kids must not be cared for. And I will tell you that I had a couple of very contentious conversations with the school. I can remember one where, and when I get to the end, let me just interrupt. When I get to the end of this, I'm going to give you the flip side of it, sort of what happened, to give you a feel for the journey. I remember one conversation I had about my middle daughter. I have 3 daughters and 2 sons, where the school called, and I get a call from one of the teachers, and the teacher says to me, she goes, I examined your daughter's lunch, and I don't really think that you're giving her a nutritious lunch. Well, I know this is a show of peace and love. I did not return the conversation with peace and love. I basically told her that if she ever looks in my daughter's lunch again, I'm going to hunt her down and, and come talk to her.
Right.
Okay. Right. Because the presumption, what the presumption is that I, don't know what I'm doing. Keep in mind that daughter ended up growing up, going to George Washington University, Elliott School of International Affairs, graduating magna cum laude, is fluent in Mandarin, has all sorts of career success in her life, and is getting married in a month from now, which I'm happy to go for. So I guess the lunch that I gave her really didn't affect that course. The flip side of that is the crazy court system and the crazy attitude that the mothers and the people in the town that I lived took as time went on. And I'll sort of address the latter first, is that once they saw the kids start to grow and succeed, you have to realize what this is we're in a wealthy New Jersey town, and people have money, they have means, and the women there like to complain about their lives. They have it really tough and it's really hard, and they have a housekeeper and this and that. In the meanwhile, I'm running a business with 100 employees, raising 5 kids on my own, and everything is working out. So it's very hard to complain to their husbands who know me, because they can always sit there and say, well, look, Matt is doing this. What's the problem? So I became a little bit of a pariah. And then there's another side to that too, which was actually, to me, the most emotionally painful side of it, which was, and I get this today, if I tell somebody the story that I told you today, and this may be even true for some people in your audience, they always say to you, well, if the mother left 5 little children, you must have done something to her.
Okay.
And so there was this overarch of people would look at me, they would sometimes not let their kids play with my kids because they're like, he must be a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm sure you know this, on the legal side, the court system is just backwards, right? So when I went through this, they knew the mother was messed up. And so they didn't, you know, no judge wants to have his picture on the front of a paper that says he handed custody over to somebody and they ended up harming the children. So I got custody of those 5 children and then he gave her all the money. Imagine this, and I talk about this in my book, is that I got custody of the 5 children and she got lifetime alimony.
Yeah.
Right? And you want to talk about, you know, there was a very interesting tweet where someone said, there was a discussion on Twitter, this is really relevant to your topic, where someone said on Twitter that there is no governmental regulation which causes men to affect their health. It was a sort of an interesting, and somebody, a very smart person, replied, well, lifetime alimony does.
Touche.
And I actually responded to that. If you go on my Twitter, I have a response that has like tens of thousands of likes and retweets where I talked about how it affected my physical and mental health along the way. So I think, to really get back to your original question, I think that men can be, I know I was confused for a long period of time. As a single dad, you're still confused. And I think men today are very confused in how to treat women, what roles they're supposed to take. And we know, and we won't get into politics, but we know that the progressive movement is really fostering that confusion. One could argue that it's deliberate to weaken men, but I think that I think men have been, I think to maybe the 1970s or 80s, men's roles were a little bit more clear where they position. And I think from that point on, I think men are very, very confused. I really do. I really do.
Well, Matt, I think that as you know, excellent bookends to your piece here. Men and women these days are confused about all this, and we end that bit with the same conclusion. I think that when we speak of the sacred, well, what you referred to was sort of the systemic bias within the judicial court systems, the laws, and then you preceded that by addressing the sort of almost a social stigma or social bias. You know, well, you are a man and therefore you're inadequate. You couldn't possibly be raising these children on your own because men can't do that. And
That's
then
right.
you alluded to how, you know, Hollywood, let's just call it television in general. It's true. Men are portrayed as bumbling, helpless idiots. And, you know, there's a degree that that's funny. I mean, if you think back to the Honeymooners, that was funny. But it was never left open that the show always closed with, baby, you're the greatest. You know, he came back around, he saw how he kind of got out of hand, lost himself. He came back around and everything was wonderful and they were in love and they continued on another day. But, you know, with shows like, I think of like, is it called King of Queens? Is that the show? And Everybody Loves Raymond and shows like that where, you know, the man is just like, he's left in that state of, don't take him seriously. He's an absolute idiot. He couldn't function without us. And, you know, although there is an element of entertainment value to that, it's not worth it. It's not much. And it does more harm than good by far. So that's how.
You know what I think? I think when you sort of talk about Hollywood, I think of the movie The Intern. I don't know if you know the movie.
Not familiar with that.
It's with Robert De Niro, but I actually wrote a piece about that on my blog about how, even though, you know, the movie has a lot of individuals in it that are progressive in their mindset, it dealt with the deterioration of testosterone in men. You know, it's a story of an older man who becomes an intern in a company with younger people. And they look up to him like he's like this unbelievable guy. But all he's doing is being sort of a gentleman and being chivalrous and, you know, being like we used to think of men. And they're looking at him, you know, they don't know how to talk to women. They don't know how to be tough. They don't know how to sort of, they've lost these sort of hunting skills. Now, one could argue once again that this is a deliberate cancer on our society to weaken men and will eventually be overthrown by the next crusades that come our way. But I think that movie really did a good job, even though I don't know if it was the exact intention of the movie, but showing this, right? Showing that men kind of have lost their way and maybe redirecting men to do this. So I really think that this is a big societal problem. I don't know if we really want to go into that direction, but I think that, you know, I think it's very hurtful for men. And I think you see this out in the incarceration rates for men, the suicide rate for men. You see all of these. This is the end result of it, right?
Yeah.
You see women exceeding men in academics. Colleges, I think in the US, I think now have more women than men in college. Where is that going to go in many, many years from now? So I think that I don't know what the solution is, but I think that if society doesn't correct its perception of men and men keep journeying in the wrong direction, I think that we're in for a world of hurt. That's what I really think.
I can't disagree with anything you've said, and I also cannot claim to have all the answers. But and it's also, I don't want to just keep saying, oh well, we're disillusioned, we're confused. I mean, so we need to do that. We need to do more than that. And what I would say, and again, we are not attacking women, and we're not saying we're not attacking women and then attacking women and then saying we're not attacking women. What we're addressing is a gross imbalance between the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, and sort of a non-recognition of their inherent and natural complementariness. They, you know, we're talking about the yin and the yang, the yin
That's
yang.
right.
Okay, so let me ask some hypothetical questions. You take the yin and the yang. Okay, these are represented as the Taoist symbol with the black and white that are fused together. And also, please note that the black contains a kernel of white, and the white contains a kernel of black, and that is because each pole contains a kernel of its opposite. That is inherent to understanding the Taoist philosophy, and this symbol that symbolizes not good and bad, not right and wrong, that is a gross misunderstanding, but rather balance of opposite poles. Okay, so if you were to say sacred masculine as represented by the white side, sacred feminine as symbolized by the black side, which one is wrong? The question cancels itself out. Which one is bad? Which one is right? These questions all cancel themselves out as soon as they see the light of consciousness. And, you know, so the obvious answer is that, and also, which one is better? Although today's narrative is pushing that question very hard. One is better and one is worse. One is toxic and one, we never use that word. Can you guess which ones they are? So again, we're not attacking women, and we're not promoting men either, but we're saying there is a grave distortion in the perception between what we call the essences or the aspects of the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine. And the key is always complementary balance. But that's not what we see in the reality of the world as it plays out, at least in this era.
You know, and you know, I'm a math guy, so for me, you look at the stats. You know, we can talk this happened and that happened, but when you're looking at for me, it's really the ultimate stat is deaths, longevity, how men are succeeding. And when you're in a situation where 80% of suicides are men, I bet 90% of incarcerations are men, maybe more, right? I don't know that stat off the top of my head. What percentage of men drop out of college, right? What percentage of men, mostly men, are dying by violent crime? You know, when you look at these kinds of things, it just, you can't have this. You know, you're going to have a society that is going to collapse, you know, and I think, you know, I don't want to go too far into this area, but if you look at some of the minority communities, You look at, and this is something we're going to take a little shot at men right here. You look in the minority communities, what percentage of men leave children that they father? That's sort of a generational problem, because the leadership in their community, the ideology in their community, the family structure has broken down. So I believe men are headed really this is like men in general. I think we're headed maybe in a very bad direction, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I've got to chime in lest I forget it for another thought. We talked about the crime, and how many men are incarcerated, how many men are victims of violent crime. And, neither of us, Matt, are Pollyannas about anything. How many of these incidents are perpetuated by men as well?
That's right.
I mean, you can't deny that. The overwhelming majority of these crimes are committed by men also, which is just another very dire symptom of men being lost in themselves. And
that's right.
I'm very glad that you mentioned fatherless homes, because anybody with 5 minutes of spare time and a Google connection could find out a stunning array of statistics that will show you how, in a nutshell, all of the negative, undesirable characteristics and outcomes that we fear would happen to our children are exponentially increased in likelihood by the absence of a father.
I'm going to give you a stat that blows people away when I give them a stat. It's about a year old, but it'll suffice. Of the 27 mass shootings that have happened, the last 27, 26 were perpetrated by men without fathers.
Okay.
That's when you sort of think about that. It's like it sort of takes your breath away, and you realize the gravity of the problem. Then you add on to that the progressive movement in this country, which says men are bad, particularly white men are bad. In fact, they could even be called domestic terrorists. They have their blue collar jobs being taken away. Inflation makes it difficult for them to feed their families or support themselves. And then they're being told they're bad human beings.
Yeah.
And that breeds more extremism, more desperation, and it's only going to exacerbate the problem. So it's sort of like a gaslighting on a societal level. You do all of these things to men, then they act out and I'm not making excuses. There's never an excuse for bad behavior, but you sort of, if you think about it as an overall societal thing, you do all of these things to men, and then men start doing terrible things, and you say, see, men are bad. I mean, what do you expect is going to be the result of this?
Matt, let me put this on what you just said. Every single thing you just said is obviously it's all observable in today's world. There are some whacked out narratives being pushed hard down people's throats, and a lot of people have had enough. And again, I don't want to steer this too much into politics and all that, but I think if you aren't aware of those things now, what planet do you live on? But I don't want to lose my thought here, and I think I just did. And
it's okay. So what I would say is that,
oh, I got it. I'm sorry, Matt. Please allow me to just one time, because it's only got like a 3-second life cycle and it's gone. The conclusion: men did these horrible things, and indeed they did, as you noted. 26 out of 27 of the last, isn't that horrible to say that, of the last mass shootings in the United States were committed by men who grew up without a father. Okay, you don't need any more stats than that. That's enough. I don't even want to hear anybody talk that is not a factor. But here's the thing about men, the conclusion: therefore men are bad. Okay, men are not bad, just as women are not bad. But here's the difference between men and women. And although men and women are qualitatively equal, they are not the same. And there's a lot of people haven't realized that yet. Men, when they are hurt and wounded, process into anger and rage. That's right. I don't know who said it once, but somebody brilliant, and I remembered the point, but I don't remember who said it. Anger is pain ejecting through a very small hole.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's right.
It's like it or not, agree with it or not, wish that it was some other way or not, the fact is that men process their pain, and it doesn't make it okay to do this, but I'm just telling you what is. Men process their pain and their wounds as anger and rage. And when you, as they say, act out on that, you have great damage being done. So if you unpeel the layers of the onion, this pain is, you could even say generationally as well as societally, regenerating and repeating and cloning itself through the generations of grandfather to father to father and daughters as well, and etc. But it's just playing itself out. And as they say, hurt people hurt people.
And I think I can say that very succinctly. I didn't make this up, but it's sort of like a wise saying, which is that there is no new pain. It's just recycled pain.
I
The
hadn't heard
world
that.
there's just pain out there, and it just gets passed on and it gets passed on. And once again, I want to revert to the minority communities. We talked about mass shootings, which are typically, committed by young white men. We
Right.
look into the inner cities where, this is one of these diversionary tactics you see going on, where they talk about gun violence, but 99% of the gun violence is committed in the inner city by males, minority males, who are fatherless. And as a result, you have, like you said, this anger and lack of direction and guidance and role models and hopelessness that exists and in these cities. And you look into Chicago and you see thousands of shootings over the years, and they're all committed by the same kind of individual. And society just turns its head to this, because we're in this movement right now where we've acknowledged men are bad. They need to be pushed down, and that's just the way it is. And they think that's going to give a good result to themselves. That's really the fallacy. And I think really the sort of our conclusion to this topic is that if society, and I mean this for women, I mean this for men, if society thinks that advancing women by putting men in their place or putting men down and doing this is going to actually advance them, it won't. It's actually a deterioration of the entire societal structure and will result in the downward spiral of everybody, men and women.
I think that to that point, you do not lift yourself up by pushing somebody else down. We all have to help elevate each other, and you can't deny that that I think much more in the past than now, there were countless examples of women not being adequately respected, typically by men. That happened. And what I think.
Wait. I'm sorry to interrupt. Didn't happen. In many countries in the world, it goes on today.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah. The United States is where you hear the loudest complaints and of the smallest violations compared to numerous other cultures that we could cite around the world happening right now. True.
That's right.
But what I think is, if you talk about what they call third wave feminism and all that, I think it's like an overreaction or an overkill response right now that we're experiencing against men in response to that. And what I hope we can reach really soon is a nice balance of complementariness and mutual respect, where all of us respect the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, both within ourselves and as juxtaposed upon gender as well, so that the sacred feminine, so that women are respected for their sanctity of womanhood, and men equally are respected for the sanctity of their manhood. And what am I talking about when I allude to that? I'm talking about aspects or qualities of each complementary yin yang essence. I wrote these down. When I speak of the masculine, I'm speaking of the archetypes and the aspects of hunter, protector, defender, warrior, provider. Now, Ecclesiastes, there's a time and a season for all things. When you need that warrior to stand in front of you, you're going to learn the value and respect for that warrior. And when you need that nurturing, sacred, feminine, gentle, soft, understanding, nourishing, you're gonna respect, for example, if you were accosted by someone that wanted to take your life, wow, are you gonna understand and respect the sacred masculine archetype of protector, warrior? And if you are alone and dying, sick in your bed, and a nurturing, sacred, feminine type person, probably a woman I'm referring to, doesn't have to be, I'm referring to aspects here, nurses you gently and understandingly and non-judgmentally, wow, are you going to derive a great sense of appreciation and respect for the sacred masculine. They each have their time to shine. They each are medicine for different wounds that we experience.
That's right. I couldn't agree more. And I just think that there are evil forces at work. And so in the foreseeable future, I don't see what you're talking about happening, because this is not, we talk about this like it's a mysterious process that happened, this deterioration of men and their roles and so on. It's not a mysterious process. It's a deliberate process to weaken the West. I firmly believe that, I'm sure. I don't want to speak for you, but I think we think alike like this. And until people wake up and the folks fight back, Thomas Jefferson style, I think that we're just headed in a bad place. We're definitely headed in a bad place. So,
Matt, before our interview, when I was getting ready, I actually had the thought to ask a very rhetorical and almost sarcastic question. And what came to my mind before we began our interview, I didn't share this with you, but I will now.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost as if there's a deliberate intention to undermine the male aspect of society.
First.
And of course, this is rhetorical, because if you don't see it by now, what planet are you living on? And I want to quote Jordan Peterson. If you think tough men are dangerous, wait until you see what weak men are capable of.
That's right.
And if strong, noble, warrior, protector, defender, lion type men who society needs are undermined by means of shaming them, making them feel that it's an awful travesty to be a man, or to have masculine traits, to embody the sacred masculine aspects, and also, which fits into this, to cut them off, to disconnect them from their ancestral roots, traditions, from their tribes, their history, their spiritual and religious roots, all of this. If you can cut somebody off from their past, they are a rudderless ship that can easily be steered according to their new masters. And it's almost as if, it's not almost as if, it's literally that. Western society is being cut off from its past, its identity, its dignity, its traditions, and its momentum, by means of shaming and disconnect from traditions and undermining the pillars that have upheld it until now. Not perfectly, but wait till you see what happens when those pillars are knocked over. You think it's bad before, wait till you see what it's like without them there at all. That's what I see.
I couldn't agree more. But, we do need to keep optimistic. We do need to have faith. We need to keep fighting and keep speaking out and keep saying these things, and hopefully somebody will listen.
Well, there are some resources for men, as far as especially the realm of spirituality I'm referring to, but also I can't allude to that topic without expressing some personal observations and even disappointment, because, and again, I have to say this because of the way society is now. We're not attacking anyone here. And some of the things that we've discussed might be considered by some to be edgy But that's because of the state of the dysfunctional world we are living in right now. Because in the past, these things wouldn't even, they would have been boring. Like, why are you even talking about it? But in the realm of spirituality, let's talk about, for example, events where the public would be invited to attend some sort of a spiritual training or seminar or retreat or something. I've been to several of these. It is 8.5 to 9 women per one man. I am not blaming women. I am commending women for being there. Congratulations. Good for you. Where are the men? There are maybe a little bit more increasingly. Maybe now it's 7 or 8 women to two or three men now. But everywhere I went, it was overwhelmingly women, as if spirituality is female. Well, that's another myth. That's a wrong presumption. Spirituality is spirituality, and it has masculine and feminine sacred aspects. But men are unbelievably underrepresented, and I'm not blaming the women. I'm saying to the men, where the hell are you, so to speak? 2 years ago or so, I tried to organize a gathering of men for a gathering to talk about pretty much what you and I are talking about now, but even in another level of spirituality than we're even touching on here. And I invited 12 men who I know personally who are spiritual. I would call them, they're spiritually focused men. I invited 12 of them and said, each of you may bring 2 of your spiritually attuned male friends to this sacred masculine gathering. Let's see what we can get going here. We could suggest this, and this topics. And of course, like to, okay. So of the 12 that I invited, I got a response from 2, and 10 never bothered to respond.
Exactly.
And the 2 said, hey, sounds great, but I'm not coming. I can't come. I'm not going to. And some of it was legitimate, and some of it was kind of, well, whatever. And I made a decision right then and there, Matt. It was a little bit from being hurt. I said, I will never organize another event for men. I'm not going to organize any events. I will have to find another way to give of myself. And actually, that's what this channel, Brother Owl's Garden, came from, that desire to give of myself, but not, I can't do that context. It was too disappointing for me. So in this platform, I offer everything that I can. I know there's people who can offer much better than me, but this is what I have to offer. And it is to those who would receive it. And I just hope that it's useful and meaningful and helpful to them. And that's why I like to bring in other people that I consider to be meaningful and who have meaningful and useful good things to share, and hence I invited you. And
right. I think that, I'm really happy to be here today, and I'm really happy to get this message out with you and share this time with you. And like I said in the beginning, I hope that the audience, your audience, really gets something out of this and maybe starts to think about these problems in a meaningful way.
Well, I'm sure that a lot of the viewers who will be watching this will be led along that path, and it's thanks to you. Matt, I know that you've done literally hundreds of interviews, podcasts, radio shows, and stuff, and yet somehow you agreed to come onto my little channel and give of yourself. So I honor you, and I thank you.
You're my pleasure. I love being with people I love.
Well, that sums it up right there.
You see, it's manly. You can be manly and tell another guy you have love for him.
Absolutely. It's all good. And all of these blockages and biases and stigmas, wow, are they way old, and do they need to be gone? And so maybe your sharing with us today might help to bring some men a little closer to being completely free to be the men that they are. And this helps the women in the world as much as the men as well.
Absolutely.
Every uplifting helps every uplift.
Uplift.
Earlier I said, hurt people, but healed people heal people.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah. Matt, I want to thank you again from the bottom of my heart for being here today. And as always, I close each episode by reminding all of us to remember to abide in thankfulness for your highest good in the most benevolent outcome of the divine will.
Amen.
Amen.